Not going to go to see my dear friend. I say dear friend because she is a dear friend. I'm not going to go see Loida Lewis. I should, but I'm not. I know I should, but I'm not because some personal reasons. I got some health issues, and also my visa to San Francisco has run out, so I'm not going to go to San Francisco today. But I want to tell you that by all means, you should go to San Francisco today. You should go see Loida Lewis at 6 o'clock p.m. if you're near the Centro Filipino at, I believe the address is 814 Mission Street. Loida Lewis is going to be there today. Yeah. And here's the thing about Loida Lewis. And I wrote this in my my piece in the Inquirer.net. I mean, you think about effective, iconic Filipinos, and is there? I mean, really think about this. Is there? Name one. I mean, I'll tell you one that pops up immediately because he's a California, state attorney general, Rob Bonta. But Bonta is still on the ascent. I'm talking about someone who has been there a long time in the community from the Marcos years and is still fighting. She has her own private life. She's successful. I mean, really, it's Loida Lewis. And I know some people were, they were just gushing about Loida Lewis, about her arrival today in San Francisco. But it's true. She is an iconic Filipino American. And that's why I wrote in my column in the Inquirer.net, Loida Nicolas Lewis, the anti-Imelda, comes to town. I mean, she is. I mean, I'm sure I would like her poor as well as wealthy. But you got to admit that when she's wealthy, she's effective. I mean, look, Mother Teresa was effective too. She wasn't wealthy. But for regular folks, if you have a certain amount of capital, and Loida Lewis is nothing but a capitalist, if not a capitalist, that is, she can be effective when she puts that capital to good use. Civic projects, community projects, people projects. Right now, I mean, you ask people who are in the know, who've been around in Asian American circles, Filipino American circles for decades, and they'll say of people who are out there now in the community, is there anyone more effective than Loida Lewis, Loida Nicolas Lewis? And so I write that in my column today in the Inquirer.net, and I suggest that if you are, I know it's Thursday 420, right? You don't want your evening to go up in smoke while watching the Warriors. Come on, you don't think the Warriors are going to play better knowing that you're watching them? I mean, here's the thing about the Warriors. I think the Draymond Green suspension is an atrocious act by the league. The NBA should know better. But what they've done is really a travesty in terms of destroying the series between the Warriors and the Kings. I mean, if you're going to let them play by not calling any fouls, but then an action like what happened the other game between Draymond Green and Sabonis, the Kings center, they gave both technicals. They gave a flagrant foul to Green. They threw him out. That should be enough. But they went one further, almost to assure that the Warriors don't win by throwing out Green. So I'm just saying that if your excuse for not going tonight, it's not my excuse, is that you want to see the Warriors play. I've got something better. And that is at the San Francisco Filipino Cultural Center, Centro Filipino, 814 Mission Street, tonight at 6. Tonight. You still got like 4 hours to like change your plans. Filipino American icon Loida Lewis is going to be talking about her winning book. Loida Lewis, I'm holding it up now. Why should guys have all the fun? Indeed, why should guys all the fun? It's a follow-up to the book that was written about her husband. Why should white guys have all the fun? Because Loida Lewis, if you don't know, is part of this, was part of this dynamic marriage between herself and Reginald Lewis, who really is a Hall of Fame corporate business type. In the era of leveraged buyouts, he took a company, Beatrice, and when he died at age 50, he was, he was worth $400 million. So, that's Loida Lewis's background. She wrote this book called Why Should Guys Have All the Fun? Because, in fact, when her husband died, people looked to Loida Lewis to guide the ship. And she didn't have formal business training. She was just a lawyer. And as the story goes, she didn't run the business into the ground. She didn't, she rose to the occasion. She led the company to profits, sold at a record, for a record amount. She surprised everyone because no one thought, just as no one thought a black man could run the company, her husband, Reginald Lewis, no one thought a Filipino American woman could run the business. She did. She proved successful. So she's written this book. I'm not going today partly because I saw her twice in New York City. And I was very touched. She introduced me to Blair S. Walker, her co-writer. She said, here's one of our great comedians, which surprised me because, I was flattered that I'd made her laugh enough to say that. And in her book, she actually writes, to dear Emil, comedian par excellence. God bless, comedian par. Look, as someone who has wanted to do things for laughs, that's a high compliment. But the fact is, she's known me as any number of things, right? And it just seeing her in New York and her writing that in the book, as I had her sign my book, it made me think that, she's known me as a writer, as a journalist, as a columnist, as a broadcaster, as a podcaster, as a narrowcaster, as a raconteur and raccoon lover, animal rights guy. She's known me as all these different things. And I've thought about that exchange we had in New York, and I've come to this conclusion that resumes do not define us. We are what we are now. Some people see me now. Oh, you're some guy on the internet talking. Maybe it's a podcast if I listen to the PETA podcast. But the fact is, we can be many things all at once. And Loida, as I read her book and as I hear her talk, she is so many things, right? The subtitle of her book is An Asian American Story of Love, Marriage, Motherhood, and so there's a little thing there getting in the way of the phrase. She is so many things. And then I thought about it. What does she represent to the Filipino community in America? She's our anti-Imelda Marcos. I don't know how many shoes Loida owns. But we need someone like her on our side, an actual fighter with money and a sense of real grace. You know, for whatever the former First Lady, Madam Marcos, stands for, in heels or flats, the glorification and the positive spin of the martial law era, you know that Loida Lewis is the opposite and that she stands for the good. And for as long as I've known Loida, she's been this dual force for the Filipinos in the Philippines, as well as for Filipinos in America. I mean, she's an American, right? After all, born in the Philippines, but trying actively to lift up the political well-being of Filipinos here in the U.S. You know, and I forgot this. She was one of the founders of the National Federation of Filipino American Associations, NAFA. Now, boy, I was there at the beginning myself as a journalist covering it. I remember in the Civic Center, San Francisco, seeing Alex Escalmado, another co-founder, rallying people, talking about the importance of an organization. Remember, it went through several types of, iterations before they finally came to agreement on the National Federation of Filipino American Associations, NAFA, which dared to harness the power of a community that was too much like the mother country, a long archipelago of groups at odds with each other. But it was Alex Escalmado, one of the co-founders, along with Loida and others, who helped lead this charge with NAFA on U.S. Filipino issues like the Filipino Veterans Equity Pay issue. She also spearheaded the drive for dual U.S. Filipino citizenship. And let's not forget also our purpose here in America as Filipino Americans. Loida made sure people knew there was a Filipino presence as she campaigned for President Joe Biden, and before that Hillary Clinton, and before that President Barack Obama. I mean, to this day, Loida refuses to mention the name of that other former president, whom she simply calls 45, right? The indicted one, the lying one, but not like Fox News, channel $787.5 million, the Lies Are Us network. She refuses to say the name of that guy, 45. So by Loida by her politics, but she's a woman of the people, a people person of the kind that belies her status among the wealthy. Like I said, I'd like her even if she were poor, but she is definitely more effective wealthy. And that's the power of Loida Lewis. Some people may have heard some of the things that I've said over time. I'm a kind of I have a strange love affair with capitalism. Loida she's a capitalist at heart, but she's also the heart of capitalism. How do you deal with the contradictions therein and still be true to what's good? Read Loida's book. She deals with the contradictions as they come up in life. I mean, her life, right? Young woman from the Philippines. She meets one ambitious African-American, Reginald Lewis from Baltimore. The story of how they managed to fall in love despite her Filipino-ness, her Catholicism, her conservative family values. I mean, start with that tricky premarital sex question. As Loida shared with an audience in New York, she says, if it happens naturally, it's good because anything natural comes from God. Now, I know it may sound like a rationalization to you, but don't pass judgment. Just an insight on how a successful woman has had to deal with all the contradictory forces in her life. And when in doubt, Loida chose love. Use her head, she says, but follow your heart. One of the things she likes to say. She followed Reginald Lewis. And as I said, he struggled through the white corporate structure, but she knew her role. Her role was to support him, to be positive. Story she tells in the book, and she talks about if you go to see her today at 6:00. It's how they work together. Loida and Reginald Lewis to defy the obstacles that were in the way for anyone different from the mainstream. Here you have an African American married to a Filipino, struggling to make it in the corporate white world. And look at what Reginald Lewis did. You know, Loida talks about it in her book. He was one of the first non-whites to break through the capitalist curtain, you might call it, to play the cutthroat game of leveraged buyouts. Now, what are leveraged buyouts? In the 70s and 80s, it was really a simple business move. You borrow capital, hopefully at a decent rate, sometimes not, but you use it to buy a mature company. Then by cutting costs to the bone, you're able to both service the debt and grow more equity, thereby enabling you to ultimately sell parts of the business or maybe all of the business for a profit. That's all leverage buyout is. Leverage is using not your money, but borrowed money to buy a big company. That's how you see little companies buy big companies all the time. ABC was not the big ABC. It was like a couple of small little media companies that said, oh, let's buy ABC. Same thing with NBC. You know, NBC used to be big, RCA, you know, General Electric. A little company bought NBC, Universal. That's how it's done. People borrow, they leverage, they cut the mature business to the bone, start building up equity, sell off the company, make profits on that sell-off. Hey, that's how Reginald Lewis did it in his book. He asked in his book, why should white guys have all the fun? He kind of like showed the formula. And Loida takes it the next step when she took over for Reginald Lewis. And her book is Why Should Guys Have All the Fun? And she mentioned this. She says, you know, talks about the race thing and how Reginald Lewis always went beyond the black-white paradigm. He saw himself as an internationalist, which is interesting, right? Because in the black-white paradigm of America, yeah, you're on the outs if you're not white. But when you're an internationalist, suddenly color is not a negative. And in some ways, and in probably the biggest way, having a wife, a Filipino wife like Loida, was instrumental in solidifying that mindset that helped him be successful. And then, of course, it was Loida's turn, and no one gave her a shot. People thought, oh, how's she going to do this? She showed them. And she brought the company Beatrice to even greater heights. So if you want to hear more about Loida's story, check her out today, 814 Mission Street, 6 o'clock at the Centro Filipino in San Francisco. Like I said, I won't be there, but I wanted to do all I could to make sure that other people know about Loida and what she stands for, what she's about. She's a good-hearted capitalist. They're few and far between. And I mentioned in my column a personal note about Loida. I mean, as I said, I just saw her a couple months ago, February. She came to my show. Emil, Amok, Lost NPR host. I mean, it wasn't a fancy Broadway theater. It was off Broadway and under. It was a basement theater in New York City's East Village. And there was Loida laughing with her friends. She brought a couple of friends. And then after the show, we had this impromptu after show party, totally impromptu. She wanted to go to some dim sum place, or her friends did. And I said, hey, let's go to this corner bar. It's a short walk. And so after seeing the show about my father, the colonial Manong, Loida was there with her friends. I brought some of my friends, one a writer, the other an Oscar-nominated music composer. Their families were there. Some of my family was there. And we were all sharing a meal. Imagine that. Conversation, light beverages. This is what the late foodie writer Anthony Bourdain would have called an Ichigo Ichi once in a lifetime moment. We just all came together, just spending, I think, must have been an hour or so in each other's presence, in each other's company. And clearly it was just Loida being in support of me. Being in support of me. Just another American Filipino voice, but her presence was such a gracious gesture. That's the kind of person she is. And I will never forget that night when we were all just having a good time after the show, talking about it, talking about our lives with all these disparate people, the Filipinos, my mixed family, my friends, both white. They're having a good time. That's Loida, always supportive. It's a quality that definitely comes out in her book. Why should guys have all the fun? You know, I'm sorry I can't be there today, but I wanted to talk about it and let people know, hey, it's not too late to try to get down there. 814 Mission Street. It starts at 6 o'clock. You might have to RSVP. I don't know. They won't turn you away if you say, hey, Emil sent me. But check it out. Centro Filipino, 814 Mission Street, 6 o'clock today, 420. I know a lot of people say, hey, I'm going to watch the Warrior game. Hey, the Warriors. I don't know. I'm down on the Warriors. I'm more down on the NBA. The NBA should never have suspended Draymond Green. That was beyond the call. But, hey, they'll learn. I mean, they'll look back at it and say, boy, you don't suspend a team to cost it a run at the championship. You suspend a team if there's something really egregious and bad. He was already punished in the game, Draymond Green. But now to be suspended in game 3, which is a pivotal game in the 7-game series, if the Warriors lose because there's no Draymond, then they're 3-0. And then it's almost impossible that the Warriors come back. They can, and you could wear your lucky socks all week watching the games. 3-0 is a hell of a deficit to overcome. All right, so while we're talking about sports, can I talk about the Oakland A's? I mean, the Oakland A's are unwatchable. And I mention them because the news is out that the A's are now free to leave Oakland and talk with Las Vegas. Everyone's announcing it. It's been leaked. And it's sad because I am a native San Franciscan. I'm a baseball fan. But I remember when the A's came to town, when they were in Oakland, I made it a point to get on the AC Transit bus and to go to the Oakland Coliseum and to see the Oakland A's because I wanted to see good baseball and I wanted to see a winner. And in the American League, that was the A's. In the National League, it wasn't the Giants. Pains me to say that, but that's the truth. And I remember being just a young kid wondering, I'm sure people were wondering, what is a young kid doing on an AC Transit bus alone at like 7 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock, late at night, going to games? Alone, I would go to the games because I just wanted to see the A's. I was excited about the A's. I was excited about these guys from Kansas City, and they had a little bunny that came out from under home plate to serve up a basket of balls for the umpire. And they had all these things. They had white shoes. They had mustaches. The Oakland A's, for kids like me growing up in San Francisco, and the Giants were crap. the Giants were not good. You know, it's tough enough to go to Candlestick Park to see a game, but I would take AC Transit from my home or where we lived in the Mission District to go to Oakland at night and then come back late at night, even later, by myself. Because I wanted to see good baseball. I wanted to see the A's, and the A's were winners. And they had that colossal dog when I was eating hot dogs. That was quite a mouthful. It was a great experience at the Oakland Coliseum, and now they're abandoning it. And there were attempts. Oakland's Asian American mayor, Cheng Tao, is trying to put things together. But the A's aren't budging. You'll remember the A's have always been kind of reluctant. They could have had a deal to play in San Jose years ago. But no. I know the ownership of the A's, well, Charlie Finley was good for a lot of reasons, and then when he left, it's been downhill with all the various owners. There's been some good ones. The current one, the Fisher's bad because it's just a business deal. And they don't think about the fans. They don't think about the brand of baseball out there that is now so embarrassing. I try to like the A's. It is impossible to like the A's. And so this is worse than tankmanship, where you try to lose all your games so you get the first round draft pick. I mean, it happens in the NBA and the NFL. In baseball, this is just, I don't know, I can't explain it. It hurts me, though, because they make it sound like no one's going to miss the A's. But there's going to be some people who miss the A's, namely myself. I will miss the A's. I try to like them even through some of these down years. It's been hard. The Cespedes years. I almost said, I like the A's. They got rid of Cespedes? And they got rid of all the great play. Frustrating. Anyway, I talk too much about sports, and it's best that, I've sworn that I was going to put my love of sports in check. But when I got the news today that the A's are leaving, that's it. I just had to let it out. I'm going to miss the A's. Now, the Giants made the news because Madison Bumgarner, who's pitching terribly for Phoenix, he's been released, designated for assignment. That means getting cut. The Giants have a bad bullpen. Do they need Mad Bum to come back? A friend of mine sent out a tweet saying, yeah, bring back Mad. The Giants need players. The Giants are just a couple steps better than the Oakland A's. But a confusing team. I've decided I'm not going to even follow baseball. Usually by April, I get all excited about baseball. I'm not going to get excited about baseball. And now it looks like I can't get excited about the Warriors because, well, let's see what happens tonight. Maybe a miracle will happen. But anyway, so much for sports. A lot of news today. I will say I'm kind of surprised by all the news. First of all, we'll get to the Alec Baldwin story and also to some interesting news stories about the news business. BuzzFeed is dropping out of news. I guess they just want to be a platform. We're just following the money. That is sad. But I do, in terms of Asian American issues, we have to at least mention the fact that the U.S. Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions, their committee held a hearing on the nomination of acting U.S. Secretary of Labor, Julie Su, to serve as U.S. Secretary of Labor. Now, she's getting endorsements from a lot of Asian American organizations, like the Caucus for Asian Pacific American, the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus. And they put out a release just showing some support. Because she's going to be up against, there are a lot of people who look at Judy Chu, and this things I've heard reported on talk shows, they go after her ethnicity, and for some reason, it's this really ugly, negative kind of sentiment about Judy Chu, Asian American, although they aren't that civil nor charitable. And I think we need to know what she stands for, what she's about, so that when you hear that Julie Su is up for labor secretary and all these hearings, and you hear people start to attack her, you remember what Representative Grace Meng said, New York, 6th District. I met Grace Meng in February at the All-Def dinner. Here's Grace Meng on Julie Su. Julie Su's experience and skills make her an excellent labor secretary, but it is her dedication to always supporting American workers that would make her an outstanding labor secretary. In her time leading California's Labor Department and serving as the U.S. Deputy Secretary of Labor, Acting Secretary Su has demonstrated extensive knowledge protecting workers' rights and protecting the dignity of labor. Her personal background is an inspiration to many and informs her deep commitment to helping American workers and businesses thrive. I am proud to support the nomination of Acting Secretary Su for Labor Secretary, and I urge my Senate colleagues to expeditiously confirm her for Secretary of Labor. You know, it's not going to be easy. You know, she's worked side by side with Labor Secretary former Labor Secretary Marty Walsh. She's qualified for the job. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. If you're Asian American listening to the show, even if you're not, you know, Julie Su, first generation Asian American, Chinese American. She's an attorney, dedicated to public service. She doesn't deserve the negative brickbats that she might be getting from the detractors out there who don't want to see Joe Biden appoint this, I think, would be his first Asian American. Is that possible? Anyway, Julie Su, Acting U.S. Labor Secretary. You'll see her name in the news. Pay attention. It's important. All right, now, I want to mention this thing about BuzzFeed because, you know, everyone, I think, is wondering about what's going to happen to the media. Everyone's making cuts. And now Fox is making cuts. They're even cutting back on their right-wing blowhards. One of their right-wing blowhards who had the highest ratings on the weekend, they're not renewing. And it could possibly be because of that $787.5 million settlement that Rupert Murdoch agreed to this week. As I pointed out yesterday, in a civil suit, you're probably just going to see a regurgitation of the depositions and some of the facts that are already out. So in some ways, it was good that it was settled. I would have liked to have seen the satisfaction of having a Fox News anchor kind of undressed before our eyes in terms of the amount of lies they put out about Trump's election victory, right? Lies. And they knew it. That's the problem. They knew it was lies from the very beginning. And we should know that there were a number of Asian Americans in that hierarchy. There was Viet Dinh, who's like the leading legal officer at Fox. And then there was Senior Vice President Raj Shah. who was in charge of the brand protection unit. And I think this is the thing that's most troublesome, that when you have a journalism organization and they're more concerned about brand protection, then you have corporation think getting into journalistic think. Normally, it does tend to overtake some thinking, which is why it's good that nonprofits are getting into the news business, except that nonprofits can't put out a banner or a masthead and do recommendations, electoral recommendations as a nonprofit. As a corporate entity, yeah, you could do that right under the masthead. I've done that. It's no fun when you're not speaking for yourself, but speaking for the corporation. But this is the Asian American aspect of the Fox story. Not just that Asian Americans watch Fox and eat it up. Vietnamese, Filipinos, you name it, conservative Asians, South Asians, Indian Americans. But you had, in these two guys, Viet Din and Senior Vice President Raj Shah and the Brand Protection Unit, you had Shah and Din, and this came out in depositions. They were emailing each other about how if they called the presidency for Joe Biden, that Din said, quote, "We're going to get hit very hard by the right." Meaning, we've got to protect our audience. We've got to lie to them so they won't leave us, so that we can retain our audience. That's not journalism. That's Republican propaganda PR. And that's what we have here with Fox. They essentially paid $787.5 million to birth a new company. The Fox Lies and Propaganda Machine. I mean, officially, that's what they are. Here's the other worrisome thing about that whole deal. That, it's having an impact. 787,500,000. First of all, a lot of that money that they pay out in settlement will be the cost of doing business. They'll be able to write it off, at least $250,000, according to some reported estimates. So if they're just kind of like letting it slide, like no big deal. Well, it's because it's no big deal, because the corporate laws are going to help them recoup. And then anyway, chances are they are going to have insurance that is going to take care of this. Insurance, which is as corporate as it gets in America. So just another way of looking at the Fox News settlement. My way in today is to say that, hey, people are going to be affected. And one of the things affected is that BuzzFeed shutting down its news division. Everyone's trying to cut the workforce there at BuzzFeed by 15%. They're going to lose 60 jobs. May not seem like much. But BuzzFeed was, there were some stories they broke. A decreasing amount. But, it did win a Pulitzer. BuzzFeed was not just some fly-by-night. They did win a Pulitzer, showed the change in digital journalism. And I think now you're going to see that change reflected in places like ProPublica, nonprofits going out there. But look, BuzzFeed was trying to play a corporate game. And at some point, they were kind of like a farm team for the Times, the Journal, and Bloomberg. And it's too bad. It's too bad, because that was the future. Just imagine BuzzFeed I mean, they don't have a printing press. All digital. That should represent a savings. They couldn't make it. They had to close the news division to save money, to pare down costs, because I guess it's enough just to be on the internet. What it says, though, is that people don't value news. If people weren't flocking to BuzzFeed to get the news, it wasn't being valued. From an advertising point of view, from an audience point of view. And let's wait to see what happens in other media companies. You know, layoffs are coming at NPR. That's been announced. You know, other companies have been announcing layoffs. Not a good sign. Not a good sign in, for the media in America. Because, like I said, it shows that we don't value news. We'd rather get our news word of mouth from our friends, get it on Facebook. Is that it? We'll just get it on Facebook. We don't have to, get, the full blow by blow. But it's sad because, this happens in a democracy as we find, these degradations throughout. From voting to discourse. When news takes it on the chin, not a good sign. Not a good sign. All right, one last thing, I guess. Let's say, we got to talk about Alec Baldwin. Yeah, they're throwing out his case. I mean, can you imagine that? I always wondered about how they could go after him, except, or if it wasn't just a matter of some zealous folks out there wanting to go after someone famous and then wanting to make a name for themselves. But Alec Baldwin's lawyers putting out a statement saying the prosecutors in the Rust case were dropping manslaughter charges against the actor. And, they've charged the armorer. And so apparently she's still going to face charges. But it looks like the ordeal could be over for Alec Baldwin, as a statement put out by his lawyer said, "We are pleased with the decision to dismiss the case against Alec Baldwin, and we encourage a proper investigation into the facts and circumstances of this tragic accident." So, I wasn't really following it. I know a lot of people are saying, go get Alec Baldwin, it's his fault. But I looked at, subsequently, I looked at some of the stories. I looked at what Alec Baldwin did. I can't believe, maybe as a producer, you go after the producer if he ultimately has responsibility. But going after both the actor and the producer, I'm not sure. It didn't make sense. So, and then the people who really had it for Alec Baldwin, the district attorney who filed the case, she stepped down. And so the case has been unstable. But now it looks like they're not going to harass Alec Baldwin, which I think is probably a good idea. And maybe they should concentrate on the armorer. Maybe they should concentrate on what really happened on the set, so that the cinematographer wasn't shot. October 2021. Yeah, I remember. I mean, Helena Hutchins, it seems that Baldwin is taking care of her family. So at some point, let's see what kind of case it can mount, or what kind of case survives. And I'm talking about the case against the armorer. who is still being charged. Like I said, I wasn't really into this case because it sounded more like a celebrity grab, but people covered it because people wanted to know. That is the way news works, really, ultimately. All right, so that's it for the show today. If you're listening, thank you for joining us. If you missed my my little chat about Loida Lewis, I'll tell you why I like her so much. I do. And I've known Loida for a long time now. I mean, not like buddies, but I'd see her at events. I'd ask her questions. She knew I knew who she was. But this time when I was in New York and to see her come to my show, that meant a lot. It means a lot when a lot of people, when anybody shows up to my show. And then we had that nice meal with a bunch of people at the end. It was, as I say, an Ichigo moment. That once in a lifetime occurrence where you get together with friends and you're just laying around talking, and you know that it's so special that it can't happen again. It just can't. It's just the circumstances are so unique. Every now and then you have one of those moments. You know what I mean. Get together with high school buddies, college buddies, your workmates. You go out somewhere, you go hiking, you bring a picnic lunch, you sit down, you start eating, you start talking, things get deep. You end up spending the next 5 hours together just sharing in conversation, sharing humanity, sharing your sense of who you are. Frankly, that's one of the things I miss about what happened during the pandemic. We just weren't willing to do those kind of things with other people in public. And now, my experience in New York shows that we can take that risk. We can go out, we can engage. So once again, read my column in theinquirer.net. If you're free tonight, Thursday, 4/20, 6 p.m., 814 Mission Street, Loida Lewis will be there signing copies of her book, Why Should Guys Have All the Fun? Really, it's a great story. It's a great story. Loida Nicholas Lewis. I wrote a different lead thinking about what would my dad, because she came to see the show about my father. What would my dad have said? He would have just glommed on to the Nicholas part. Oh, Nicholas! Oh, do you know Nicholas? Oh, he's my townmate. My dad would have said that. And Loida, I'm sure, would say, oh, I don't know him, Manong, but she would be nice and courteous and civil. And then my dad would come back home and he would say, hey, I talked to Loida Lewis. Okay, Dad. Okay. Anyway, regular listeners of this program know that I come on roughly around 2 o'clock Pacific each and every day. Each and every day. I try to keep it short, though. Listen to it like radio. Rush Limbaugh isn't around anymore. Just like turn on the show, put it on, let it run, do your thing. You can watch the show. You can watch it on Facebook at fb.com/EmilGuillermo.media. You can watch it on YouTube at Emil Amok1, EMILAMOK1. You can watch it on Twitter at Emil Amok, EMILAMOK. Yeah, there it is, pops up. Just say, use your finger, open it up. Wow, only 5 people have watched this? Wow, he's not very popular. Now, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We're putting it out there. The secret micro talk show. All right. Regular listeners also know I like to meditate, which is a lot of standing around doing nothing, I think. Striving, the end of striving. Just being in appreciation. and putting out the self-love to people, right? People first. It comes back to you, right? It's like, it does. You throw it out there to people, it comes back to you. And just keep these phrases in mind. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. That's it for today. Go Warriors, go Loida, 814 Mission Street, 6 o'clock, San Francisco. Stay A's. Oh, I hope they're going to go. They're going to go. Till next time. Emil Guillermo here. Mahal Kita.